In 1940, Nazi Germany controlled the Atlantic. Wolf packs of German U-boats hunted Allied merchant ships with ruthless precision. They were sinking American supply convoys faster than they could be replaced. Thousands of sailors were drowning in freezing waters as their ships burned and sank around them. The Allies faced an existential crisis. They couldn't win the war if they couldn't get supplies across the ocean. But they had a problem. They didn't know where to stop the U-boats because they didn't know where they were hiding. That's when Allied intelligence discovered something terrifying. Germany was building massive concrete fortresses, U-boat pens specifically, designed to hide their submarines and protect them from anything the Allies could throw at them. These weren't just bunkers. They were engineering nightmares that would take everything the Allies had to penetrate. By 1941, the Allies figured out where the U-boats were operating. The answer was simple but devastating. German-controlled French ports. Places like Lorient, Saint-Nazaire, and La Pallice on the Bay of Biscay. If the Allies could destroy these bases, they could cripple the entire German submarine operation. So they started bombing them. But here's what they discovered. Conventional bombing didn't work. The German Admiralty watched their U-boats getting pounded in open water. They realized that if they could just protect their submarines while they were in port, give them a few hours to repair and resupply, they could stay in the fight. They needed something that could withstand anything. So in 1941, Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz made a decision that would change everything. He ordered the construction of the most ambitious military engineering project of the war. Massive concrete shelters to house and protect U-boats. These weren't small structures. These were cathedral-like fortresses carved into the landscape. The Germans called them Bunkeranlage U-boot boat shelters, and they were about to become the most heavily bombed structures in human history. Imagine you're a German engineer in 1941. You've been given an impossible task. Design a structure that can protect a 250-ton submarine from bombs being dropped from 30,000 feet in the air, bombs weighing thousands of pounds, traveling at supersonic speeds. How do you even begin? The solution: go underground and use concrete. Lots and lots of concrete. The typical U-boat pen was a massive concrete structure built partially underground. Picture this: a rectangular fortification approximately 350 feet long, 100 feet wide, and 65 feet tall. That's longer than a football field. Picture the size of it. But here's the critical part: the roof. That's where the real engineering challenge lived. The roof wasn't just thick, it was absurdly thick. Some U-boat pens had concrete ceilings that measured 23 feet thick. That's as tall as a two-story house made entirely of reinforced concrete. To understand how massive this is, the concrete ceiling alone weighed hundreds of thousands of tons. And it wasn't solid. German engineers designed an incredibly complex lattice system of steel reinforcement inside the concrete. Thick steel beams crisscrossed through the structure, creating a web that could distribute the impact of massive bombs across the entire building. If a bomb hit one section, the stress would be transferred to dozens of other points, preventing catastrophic failure. The Germans also sloped the roof at specific angles to deflect bomb blast, rather than absorb it directly. Every millimeter was calculated. Every angle was engineered. This wasn't just construction, this was warfare through architecture. And there was more. The walls were equally reinforced. Multiple layers of concrete, sometimes 16 feet thick. Bomb-proof doors sealed the entrances. Air filtration systems. Separate compartments that could be isolated if one section was damaged. At peak construction, Germany was building these massive fortresses. Simultaneously at ports across occupied Europe, the scale was staggering. Each facility required hundreds of workers, thousands of tons of concrete, months of construction. But here's where it gets dramatic. The Allies knew what was happening. They were watching the construction, and they were terrified, because these pens weren't just going to protect submarines in port, they were going to extend the operational range of the U-boats. If submarines could hide in these fortresses, repair and resupply, they could stay in the Atlantic longer. They could sink more ships. They could kill more American sailors. So the Allies did what they always do. They tried to stop it with bombs. In 1943, the RAF launched Operation Crossbow, sustained bombing campaign specifically designed to destroy the U-boat pens while they were still under construction. They dropped thousands of tons of bombs on the construction sites in France, trying to destroy them before they could be completed. German workers raced against time. They poured concrete day and night. The sound of construction mixed with the sound of bombs falling. Workers died. British bombers returned again and again, dropping heavier and heavier bombs. But the Germans kept building. It's almost hard to comprehend the determination on both sides. The Allies were bombing with everything they had. The Germans were building faster and faster, knowing that completion meant their U-boats might survive. Men were dying on both sides, but neither side could stop. By mid-1943, the first major U-boat pens were complete. And when the Allies tested them with bombs, they discovered something shocking. Conventional bombing couldn't destroy them. The Allies had a problem. Their standard bombing tactics weren't working. U-boats were getting repaired and resupplied in these concrete fortresses, then heading back out to sea to sink more convoys. So in 1944, the RAF made a radical decision. They were going to use a new bomb. A bomb so massive, so powerful, that it had never been used before in combat. It was called the Grand Slam bomb. It weighed 22,000 pounds. To put that in perspective, that's more than 8 times heavier than the largest bomb they'd been using. The bomb was so big and so heavy that only one modified Lancaster bomber could carry it. The pilots who flew these missions knew they probably weren't coming back. The Grand Slam bomb made the aircraft so heavy and so slow that fighter escorts couldn't protect them properly. German fighter pilots saw these lumbering bombers as easy targets, but the RAF kept sending them. On April 16, 1945, just weeks before the end of the war in Europe, a Lancaster bomber piloted by Wing Commander Willie Tate approached the U-boat pen at La Pallice, France, the same fortress that had survived hundreds of conventional bombing raids. He released the Grand Slam. The impact was catastrophic. The massive bomb screamed through the sky and hit the reinforced concrete roof with unimaginable force. The explosion was so powerful it cratered the ground. The 23-foot-thick concrete ceiling, the engineering marvel the Germans had spent a year constructing, cracked. The entire structure shook. For the first time, one of these indestructible fortresses had been seriously damaged. But even then, even after a 22,000-pound bomb hit it directly, the U-boat pen didn't completely collapse. The reinforcement, the careful engineering, the redundancy built into every system, it all held just enough. The structure survived, though severely wounded. That's how well the Germans had built these things. By the time the war ended just weeks later, several U-boat pens had been destroyed or damaged by Grand Slam bombs. But many still stood. Some were so heavily fortified that they survived the war completely intact. Today, more than 80 years later, some of these concrete fortresses still stand in France. They're empty now. Their purpose is gone. But they remain monuments to the extreme engineering that emerged when nations competed through warfare. The U-boat pens represent one of the most intense engineering arms races of World War II on one side. Germans pushing concrete technology to its absolute limits, creating structures that could withstand bombs designed specifically to destroy them. On the other side, the Allies innovating new weapon systems because nothing else could work. And here's what's fascinating from an engineering perspective. The Germans actually succeeded. They built structures so robust that even today, historians struggle to damage or demolish them completely. The massive concrete structures have become a headache for modern coastal development in France. You can't just demolish them. They're too well built. That's the legacy of desperate wartime engineering. When survival depends on it, when thousands of lives hang in the balance, engineers push technology past where anyone thought it could go. The U-boat pens were built out of necessity, urgency, and terror, and they worked perhaps too well, surviving long after the war they were built to fight had ended.